Say clap, clap.
I can't clap. I have a lizard in my hand.
You mean clap for you?
Yeah. Thank you for your services. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. Definitely make sure to hit that bell and subscribe because there's a lot of very exciting things coming out, including bioactive ball python tanks and going to Minnesota to meet Snake Discovery and participate in the build off. Yay! Make sure you have that bell turned on. So this week we're doing another video that one of you guys requested, either last week or the week before last, I'm not really sure. But this video is going to be all about loose substrates. We're going to be focusing primarily on loose substrate usage with bearded dragons and leopard geckos, but we're going to go over a lot of different kinds of loose substrates, so you can take this video as you will. The point of this video is just to show the pros and cons of each type of substrate so that you can pick which substrate is going to work better for you and your animal. As always, the video is time-stamped and labeled of what each one is if you're looking for a certain kind of substrate. I will leave all of the links to all of the substrates, I'll try my best, in the description box below. If this video is out and there are not links in the description, comment down below and let me know because there is a large possibility that I will forget. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by Arid Reptiles, so make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out all about this awesome company. Let's get started. The first one and the most simple of the substrates is paper towel. Paper towel has always been a very highly used substrate, but I honestly think over the last few years the usage of it has gone down as people shift more towards more naturalistic looks in their vivariums. But paper towel has been popular for so long because it is very easy to clean up after your animal. You just pull the paper towel out, throw it away, put new ones in, and you're good to go. It comes with zero risk of impaction, and you can find it literally anywhere. You can go to any store, grocery store, any kind of store, and they have paper towels. The cons of paper towels are, again, it doesn't look very naturalistic, but some people don't want the naturalistic look, and that's okay. And that it doesn't really provide enrichment, especially if your animal likes to dig. There's no digging enrichment there for that animal. It also can make it very difficult for things like bearded dragons during egg laying time unless you also have a dig box in that tank because they don't have anywhere to dig and that could cause issues. But overall, paper towel has been popular for so long because of its ease of use. Next up is Reptile Carpet. Reptile Carpet is another one that has been very popular for quite a while, and that is because it can be found at all of the reptile stores. Reptile Carpet is a little more naturalistic and aesthetically pleasing than paper towels are. However, Reptile Carpet is a lot harder to clean as the waste can get down into the carpet fibers, and you do have to throw it into the washing machine to fully clean it, and even with that, it is recommended that you change it out every so often. It also has a tendency to allow for your animal's nails to get stuck in the fibers of the carpet, which could snag their nails, even pull the nails off and injure them. It also, just like the paper towels, if your animal likes to dig, it does not provide any kind of digging enrichment for that animal. On that same subject of reptile carpet, reptile sand mats. I always forget that these exist, and you guys always bring them up anytime I talk about my reptile carpet. I just forget that these exist. Reptile sand mats are another one that are easy to find. You can find them at any pet store. They look even more naturalistic than the carpets. However, they're another one, just like the carpet, that's going to be very difficult to clean because these you can't even throw into the washing machine. But they don't come with that risk of snagging your animal's nails in the carpet fibers because there is no carpet fibers. You will have to replace them pretty often though because there's not really an easy way to clean them, and we don't want parasites just harboring in that mat. Next up is tile. Tile was my favorite for a very long time because it potentially could look a lot more naturalistic than the carpet and the paper towels, especially if you get sandy, naturalistic colors. It is very easy to clean. You just pop them out and wash them off in the sink, or if they're grouted down, you just rinse out the tank and it's good to go. They don't harbor parasites because they're not porous. The waste just sits on top waiting for you to clean it up. As long as you are using a texture tile, which you should be if you are using tile, it also helps to file their nails down so their nails don't get too sharp. Downfalls of tile, number one, it's not the easiest to install. You can't just use scissors and cut it up like you do the carpet, paper towels, all that stuff. You have to actually buy a tile cutter or go to a department store like Home Depot and have them cut the tile for you to fit, so that extra step could cost extra money if you're buying a tile cutter, or an extra inconvenience if you're having to have a store do it. Another downfall to tile that I was just recently made aware of, I guess long term form on this very hard surface could potentially cause them to have joint problems in the long run, so that is definitely something to be aware of. Next up, we have bioactive substrates, and we're going to split this into two parts. The first part is going to be store-bought bioactive substrates. They definitely give you that naturalistic look because it is a loose substrate. They're also store-bought, so some pet stores are going to have things like this, but a lot of the best bioactive substrates to buy for your animal are going to come from buying them online from places like Blue Guardy and Arcadia if you are not in the United States. Josh's Frogs has their own line of these now. There are definitely a lot to choose from, and they are pre-mixed and made for arid creatures. The downfall of buying bioactive substrates is a lot of times people can get confused because there are multiple different kinds of bioactive setups. So we have bioactive setups like we use for crested geckos and humid species that the soil needs to stay wet at all times, and then there are arid bioactive setups, and people get that confused very often, especially if you were just now going into bioactive setups. But buying pre-mixed ones from websites like that definitely are helpful because they will say arid bioactive substrates on them. Another pro to bioactive substrates too is cleaning is kind of non-existent. In a bioactive setup, you are using a cleanup crew to clean that substrate, meaning that whatever bugs, whether they're arid isopods or mealworm beetles, mealworms, anything like that, they are actually the ones breaking down the waste for you, and they're actually turning it into nutrients for the plants in that tank. So you don't have to clean up most waste other than urates. You also can do bioactive substrates without making it fully bioactive, and you're just going to make sure to spot clean it, but even that could potentially be a little bit easier than cleaning it off of something like tile where it can spread around. Downfalls of bioactive substrates are, number one, if you're not actually setting it up bioactive and there's no cleanup crew, that does mean that you will have to clean out that substrate and redo the substrate every couple months, and that can get very expensive very quickly. The other downfall to bioactive substrates is that some people have a very high fear of a risk of impaction, and this is a loose substrate, which means that your bearded dragon is probably going to consume some of it at some point. However, if your habitat is set up correctly, if you have the proper UV light, if your basking spot is the right temperature, if you are feeding them properly, if you're cleaning up waste properly, if you're doing everything right, that risk of impaction goes down greatly. So just keep that in mind, but that fear is definitely a negative. Next up is self-made bioactive substrates. Self-made bioactive substrates is you making that bioactive substrate yourself. So buying all the individual parts and mixing it together. This could potentially be cheaper in the long run, especially if you're buying in bulk in order to change that substrate out over time. And the pros are basically all the same as the store-bought ones. The cons, however, are that you're doing it yourself. So there's a lot more research involved. There's a lot more making sure that everything you're putting in there is safe involved. Other than that, it's basically the same. I just wanted to make a distinction that you can make your own bioactive substrate if you don't want to buy pre-made bioactive substrate from a company. Excavator Clay. This is another one that I often forget and you guys remind me of in the comments. Excavator Clay is pretty awesome. I have this kind of going along with the bioactive substrates because I have used Excavator Clay in a bioactive setup for my Leopard Gecko, and I really like using Excavator Clay. The pros are that this clay allows you to literally mold your tank however you want it to look. You can mold hides in, you can mold climbing areas in, you can make that tank look however you want to make it, and it could be pretty awesome. There are quite a few cons to Excavator Clay though. Again, it is going to be incredibly difficult to clean. If you are using it alongside a bioactive setup, this isn't going to be a con for you. It's not something you have to worry about. But using it by itself, it's going to be very difficult to clean. If the Excavator Clay gets so soiled that you can't clean it, you literally have to rip it out and start over. Also, Excavator Clay takes a very long time to actually set up and harden. It takes days. You have to wait actual days for it to even get to a hard enough point that you can do anything else with the tank. But all in all, if you use it correctly, if you are using it in conjunction with a bioactive substrate, this can be a fantastic addition to your tank. Cocoa fiber and cocoa coir, those sorts of coconut-derived beddings, substrates. Those sorts of coconut-derived substrates. These are not going to be the best for your arid creatures. Yes, they are relatively safe. However, coconut Coir, coconut fiber. Those things are generally made to hold in humidity, and that is not what we want to do with bearded dragons and leopard geckos. We don't want humidity held in there at all. This is why Arid Bioactive mixes are so much better, because they are made to not hold in that humidity. But these things are made to hold in humidity, and they can spike your humidity. You can buy dried cocoa fiber, cocoa coir, but once that material is dried, it becomes very dusty and your animal is going to just be inhaling that. Not my favorite. I would not recommend it for leopard geckos and bearded dragons. Pros of it: it can be found everywhere in multiple different forms. You can get them at any pet store, online, literally anywhere. Another pro is that they can be great when mixed into other materials for more humid animals, because they do hold in that moisture. They're just not the best for arid animals. Cypress Mulch, this is another one that I don't personally recommend for bearded dragons and leopard geckos, because number one, I just don't like Cypress Mulch. It is very splintery, it is very stabby. When I used to use this all the time, after I would finish cleaning a tank out, my hands would just be covered in splinters. I have seen where this has gotten lodged into animals' gums before and caused issues there. This is another one too that is made to hold in the humidity. With arid animals, we are basically doing everything we can to keep that humidity down, and we really don't want to use a substrate that is made to absorb humidity and keep it in place. And it doesn't even really provide much digging area for the animal either, as they're big chunks of bark, so they would just kind of be moving it around but not really digging. But the pros of it are that it can be found at any pet store. You can find it anywhere. Cypress Mulch isn't my favorite, especially for arid animals, but it exists, so it is on the list. Next up, ReptiBark. ReptiBark is going to be another one that's going to be pretty great for humid animals, especially if you're mixing it into a giant substrate mix. It is made to hold in moisture. It'll be great for things like ball pythons, great to mix into bioactive substrates for things like crested geckos. However, again, not my favorite for bearded dragons and leopard geckos. Big con here is the holding in of the moisture part, but also these are not huge chunks, but they are chunks. So if this is mixed in, and bearded dragons and leopard geckos tend to go around and lick everything, and if they were to try to ingest one of these pieces, this is a very quick recipe for disaster. And it's also not going to provide the best digging surface for these animals, because again, just like the Cypress Mulch, it's just lightly packed on there, so they're really just going to be moving it out of the way as opposed to actually digging it up. But again, a pro to this is it's found everywhere and it looks very naturalistic. Next up is calcium sand. Calcium sand is found everywhere, and it comes in beautiful colors, bright colors that will definitely make your tank stand out. However, it is not recommended for arid creatures, even though it is one that says that it's for arid creatures on the bag. Calcium sand is not good for these animals. Calcium sand is made out of calcium carbonate, which is what Tums are made out of. Yes, these animals are ingesting calcium with their food. However, when they are going around licking everything constantly, and in the case of leopard geckos, they are just consuming that sand constantly because that's what leopard geckos do, that is lowering the acidity levels in their bellies, and it makes it harder for food to get digested, which then turns around and makes it easier for them to become impacted. There are a lot of people that have used calcium sand for many years and never had an issue. However, there are a lot of people who have lost pets to impaction due to calcium sand. And so these calcium sands also even have other things mixed into it, which makes it even worse if your animal is ingesting it because of the calcium part, and they're also just ingesting straight sand along with that, or they're ingesting walnut shells or pebbles, or all of the different things that I've seen mixed into calcium sand. That is a recipe for a very sick bearded dragon. My opinion here is just don't put your animal at risk, because there's a lot of different other options out there. That's it. That's all that I have on calcium sand. Apart from calcium sand, let's talk about natural sands. So this is one that comes up a lot, especially the Jurassic brand. Jurassic, I think that's the brand. They make a calcium sand that is supposedly derived from where these guys come from. Pros and cons of this natural sand. First pro is it looks very naturalistic. Second one, it is a much better option than calcium sand because your animal is still going to ingest it, but it isn't laced with calcium to entice them to digest it. Another pro is it definitely gives that digging enrichment that leopard geckos and bearded dragons need, but in my opinion, there are a couple of cons to it as well. Number one, where these guys come from in the wild, bearded dragons, where they come from, it is compacted compacted down sand. It's not just dune deserts like you may think of when you think of deserts. And leopard geckos in the wild, they mostly hang out in rocky crevices. They're not really hanging out in loose sand all the time. Another con with this sand, recommending natural sands always leads to people then associating that calcium sand is okay, no matter how many times I say that calcium sand is not okay. Another con is, again, it is a sand, so when they are going around licking things up, it is going to go into their bodies and not be as easy to digest as a bioactive, degradable substrate may be. On that note though, natural sand is a very integral part of a homemade bioactive substrate. It is fantastic to mix into bioactive substrates. It is wonderful when it is mixed. To be honest though, I don't know if I would recommend using natural sand. I just personally avoid it. I will let you do your research on natural sands and make the decision for yourself and your bearded dragon on that one. And the last one is walnut shells. Anytime I mention walnut shells, I always get comments saying, walnut shells? Like, what is that? And when I first started keeping bearded dragons, same. I didn't know that walnut shells existed. Why would crushed walnut shells be an option for reptiles? But it is, and it very much exists. The pros of it, I got nothing. The cons, it is not natural. If they consume that, there are tiny pieces of sharp walnut shells that they're going to be consuming, and that is not good for the digestive system. It's not a great option. But that is all I have for this video. I'm sure I will have quite a few people in the comments disagreeing with me and defending their sorts of substrate. I'm so sorry. I'm just listing my personal opinion on pros and cons of these substrates like I do in every single video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite substrate is and why, and maybe you will help somebody else out who is just now getting into reptiles. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by Arid Geckos. Arid Geckos is a fantastic company that makes conversion kits for tanks to turn them into front opening tanks for reptiles. Primarily, these are going to be for things like crested geckos, New Caledonian geckos, arboreal geckos, things that love to climb. They also do offer some front opening horizontal tanks as well for anyone that may be interested in that. Arid Geckos is absolutely fantastic. They're a great company to work with, and their products are very high quality and they are built to last. Make sure if you do order from iHeartGeckos.com, you leave Elle's Reptiles in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that you guys are coming from here. Thank you so much to Arid Geckos for sponsoring this video. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every time I put out a video Tuesday or Sunday and some Wednesdays. That was incomprehensible. This week's Instagram shoutout is for Trey Did It for following me on Instagram and going through and liking a whole bunch of my stuff. And this week's subscriber shoutout is for Rottweiler Fun for commenting on last week's video. Thank you guys both so much. You are the bee's knees. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. But, oh no, little spider. Spider, come back. Can you see it? You're supposed to be guarding my plant. That's where you just sighed at me. You're so pretty. You're so pretty. What are you doing? Okay. And that is definitely but buying from a the bees baby bearded dragon. Bye. Sorry. Oh, thank you guys. You going back up? Is that where we're going? Okay. There's a storm coming.